you were saying that it's because of your background, so the way that you grew up, that you wanted to transform that dysfunctionality into something a little bit more conducive, right? Something a little bit more healthy for yourself. So
Yeah.
maybe the first question here for me is that what sort of drove you to make those changes that you needed to make?
That's a really tough question, man. Like for the second question, honestly. And to be frank, John mentioned the money. John mentioned prestige. Those are definitely factors as well, right?
Sure.
Consulting. So I'm not as pure as you put me out to be, or as righteous.
Sure.
But yeah, you were right. Back then it was like a driving factor. It was a strong driving factor. I think. While the money is great, or while the branding is great in that way, like I think I needed something a bit more personal to keep it sustainable for myself, right? And I guess along the way it kind of changed a bit, but we can get to that later maybe.
Sure.
But yeah, you mentioned what pushed me, or how did I get out of that place?
What was your motivation, right? Going for these sorts of industries and these sorts of roles, you're not easy. And I've practiced with Edward on like case interviews and things like this.
You got way better than me.
How many countless? No, he's being humble here.
No.
But yeah, these are not easy things, right, to do. And where does that motivation come from? Where does that drive come from?
I think I owe a lot of it to my mom, right? She kind of saw that our family was also like a bit dysfunctional in that way, right? She did the best she could, right? Push it to her in that way, and also credit to her, she saw it and she knew that we could be better. She wanted better for me in that sense, right? So she really kind of, since a very young age, kind of instilled that mindset into me, or that drive, that self-belief that you are better than this, or we are better than this, and we can get out of this, and we can be better. We just need to figure out a way to get out of it, right? And to escape all the nonsense surrounding our family system right at the time. Yeah, it was pretty bad in the senses. And she was right. We eventually did figure out, but that was the starting point, right? That was the fire, that was the motivation, that was the belief that was ingrained into me since I was like a little boy. That way. There were times throughout my life where I felt that was a curse, honestly, because I was like, why did you give me this ambition, this idea, when I wasn't equipped to achieve it? And I was actually really angry for a long time, honestly, like to be honest. I was actually really angry, really bitter, angry at people around me, angry at my mom, angry at myself, angry at the world not being fair that way. But I think along the way, you kind of just come to a point of acceptance and realization that if you want things to get better, you kind of have to accept it as it is first. Then you know that, okay, you're here, so how do you move forward, right? And when you first got accepted, you're here, right? Then you can only move forward. Because if you don't accept that, you're going to be like, I'm not here, I'm somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to make any steps in that changes. So yeah, really credit to my mom. She instilled that belief. That was the starting point. That was the fire, right? So thanks to her, and yeah, I see that drive in you a lot also as well, motivation and drive to really push yourself. So I don't know, what about you? Like, was it the same with your parents? Did they really push you that way, or did they come somewhere else externally? I don't know. Like,
Sure.
yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, didn't expect me to ask you questions.
No, I was not actually. So, I thought this would be an
No,
easy
this
show.
needed to be a conversation. I'm not gonna sit here and just answer. It's like, it seems that you're really driven as well. So where did that come from? Because I know where it came from for me.
Where did my motivation?
Yeah, so was it an external thing in that way, or was it your parents as well that ingrained that belief in you that yeah, your drive to always get high, you always push yourself, right? Like, it's, you always want to be better. It's not of a sense that you're not good enough, but it's more of a sense you want to be better, right? You also want to do good. So where did that came from that way? Like,
I'm the youngest in my family, I think. So
like a chip on your shoulder.
I mean, probably to a certain extent. Sometimes, like when you're the youngest and everything, like it has the most privileges because you get off the hook the most, I would imagine, relative to like others. But at the same time, you also get probably the least amount of responsibility as compared to anybody else. I think that was one of the motivations for me to want to excel and to do better. I traveled and moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I went to Taman Segat,
Yeah.
Sekolah Kebangsaan Taman Segat in Shiraz for Standard 1, Standard 2. I moved to PJ, to Sekolah Kebangsaan Bandar Utama Damansara 4, for another 2 years for Standard 3 and halfway through Standard 4. But then my family, we moved for a short time to Italy for a couple of years because of my dad's work. So
That's crazy, actually. Yeah.
it's pretty cool. In hindsight, it was just for a couple of years, but it was a nice experience. I think the food is great.
Yeah, that's why you love pesto.
That's why I love pesto. That's why I love pasta as well. But not Italian style pasta maybe. Unless I'm in Italy, I prefer the cream. For sure, not my dad's thing. He prefers the authentic stuff. I like the cream. So. We came back and I went to high school. So I don't know. I've been moving a lot, and I think one thing about me is that I'm the sort of person who I try to be quite intentional about the relationships that I have. It doesn't mean that I'm good at doing that, but I try. Especially, I think the more that I go on, I try to cherish that.
And it was hard to maintain certain friendships.
Yes, yeah. So I remember in Standard 1, Standard 2, I would have. There were friends.
Say goodbye and
Yeah, and then I moved to Standard 3, Standard 4. I just started. So it was really cool because I had just started to join a gang.
Yeah. Your group where you belong.
Yeah, and my Malay. So my Malay wasn't that great, but my parents sent me for Malay. It still isn't, but it was getting better. So I went for tuition.
I think your French is better than your Malay.
It probably is, but I went for tuition, right? And then my Malay was starting to get good, and I knew this because in school, I would meet this Malay kid, and I would be able to argue back in Malay, and I think that's the point. That's the standard. When you're able
you
to argue back to someone in their native tongue, that's when you know you've sort of reached that level of familiarity, that level of fluency. So I traveled a lot, and I think that it impacted me a little bit because I didn't really like the whole thing about meeting people, getting close to people, and then having to move on a little bit as well. I went to high school with a bunch of international kids, and I think after graduation, one thing that I felt was that most of my friends would go abroad to study, and very few would be left in Malaysia and things like this, right? And I would always feel, it hurts a little bit. It feels a bit strange sometimes, so it's not always the best feeling. But even in uni and everything, for whatever reason, I find myself joining semi-competitive stuff. In high school, I would join Model United Nations. So you're pretty much I introduce myself as someone who's competitive. I think it's a very good.
He is quite competitive.
Because in Model United Nations, you have to challenging yourself to debate people, to throw nukes at people, right? In university, joining case competitions, joining ISAC, which is by far one of the most corporate introduction to actual work life.
Is it really?
It is.
I thought ICMS was a standard.
I didn't join that, but it probably is as well.
Yeah, sure.
That you can self-subject yourself to torture. So I don't know. I ended up joining a lot of these things. So
and you brought it forward continuously now from that point on.
And I brought it forward, right? So I found myself in the 4th year of uni. I studied econs and global studies, but I didn't really feel a passion for that. What was interesting was consulting because I genuinely liked the fact that it was industry agnostic, and it was more about developing your ability to think critically, to solve problems. And importantly, that skill set would be transferable to my personal life.
Anything actually.
Yeah, and to me, being able to think critically and to be able to develop my competency, that was by far the most important thing to me. That's sort of what I've been
doing until now, and I've seen it. I've seen it. But actually, to that point, right, you mentioned you moved to Italy and you kind of changed several schools, right? So you kind of you had to leave certain people.
Yeah.
Every time you felt you almost belonged and you left people. And then when you went into high school, you felt like you found a gang, you belonged, and then they left. Right. So it always feels like, the groups that you belong to, they're kind of dissipating.
Yeah.
Not because of your control in a way, right? Either because you're leaving, people are leaving, and
I think a lot of the times, like especially when I was growing up, it was just the nature of things, right? Like,
Right.
you don't really get to control what schools you go to.
right.
You have to make the best out of those situations.
Do you think that made you kind of like, you mentioned the intentionality with meeting people, and then the second round was solving things structurally through consulting? Do you think you're like trying to piece them together so you can build like community around you that won't dissipate out of your control, and you have control behind that, right?
Good question. Good question.
Oh yeah, I see it, and you've come a long way, and now you like strat, in Accenture, which is pretty nice. But I know that that's never ever going to be the end for you. There's never an end state. You're always going to be growing, and
Yeah.
evolving. And that's what I really like. That's what resonates with me, because I'm that way as well, and I feel like that's one core foundational thing about being friends, right? At least me being friends with you. Can't be stagnant. Gotta grow. Because if I meet you 1 year from now and you're the same person, that's okay. Like if you're happy, that's fine. But I'm a bit bored. It's not very exciting. It's nothing new.
Okay, so I have to keep changing
There's
myself.
that. I mean,
Be friends
for
with
your benefit.
Oh, okay.
For your benefit.
For my benefit to be friends.
And my
I see,
entertainment,
I see.
but yeah,
For your amusement.